Hello, hello, and welcome to the Wake Up with Giants radio show. I am joined in studio today by Rachel Smart, Dr. Rachel Smart, and our special guest co host, Paula Meyer. And we're going to go right into our centering as we usually do on social media. And then I'll introduce our topic and introduce all of our guests, and we'll dive right into our incredible show tonight. So we're going to sit up nice and straight and tall and take 3 deep breaths, breathing in and out. In and out. In and out. I show up powerfully today as a leader and as a student. I show up in my vulnerability around travel, around grief, my vulnerability in being a student and learning from these incredible giants that are on the show with us tonight. I show up to make a difference in 100 million lives and hope to make a difference in just one this evening. Paula?
I show up tonight with love, with compassion, with the joy for life. My intention is to share my story, be a storyteller, and help others that are going through loss to see that there's life after loss and life is worth living.
Thank you. Rachel?
My intention is to show up tonight clear and full of service to give high impact and pull out the best lessons to help others. And my intentions is to show up in love and to give my very best to serve at the highest level and to help 100 million lives become true to their very best self.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to dive deep into our topic today. I am Lady Luck, and I'm joined here in studio by the Smart Doctor, Dr. Rachel Smart, and our special guest co-host, Paula Meyer. And today our topic is how to transform grief through travel. And I'll tell you, friends, Paula Meyer has an incredible story about transforming her own grief through, I believe it was a year's worth of travel, an incredible year's worth of travel. She's written a book about that, and she's here to talk to us about her experiences and give us some amazing nuggets. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome.
It's great to be here too.
Wonderful. So Paula, I'd like you to start off by giving our listeners a little bit of a background. If they haven't seen Wake Up with Giants TV, your appearance on Wake Up with Giants TV, then they'll be coming in and not knowing anything about what you do and how you get started. So please do go ahead and let us know about your own experience with grief.
Okay, well, I wrote a book. I'm an author. Really excited about that. My book is all about my experience after losing my husband, Gary. He died June 1st, 2018 from throat cancer. And my story goes into, after he died, I continued to work my job for another 9 months. And finally, after some medical issues and stuff, I decided to put myself first and I quit my job. And March 2019 went on a year of travel. And I had some amazing experiences. I write about it in my book. I based my book on the hero's journey. So I, really tried to make it follow that format. And surprisingly, it did, which I think is a great thing for everyone to know that we are all on a hero's journey. We all go through those different stages and such. And I also write in the book about flashbacks with him and his illness, how I met him and then into his illness and his death and after his death. And then in March 2020, as I was finishing up my year of travel, COVID started. So I then spent nearly a year in lockdown with my mom in Colorado. At the time I was living in Washington State. So I wasn't home. My new business that I started as an event planner was basically nil. Events were a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
So my book also covers a little bit towards the end about COVID and the pandemic. And the idea to write this book came during that time and realizing that the strategies that I used during my year of travel to help me heal my heart after Gary died were also the same or similar strategies that I used when COVID happened. You know, we all got thrown into a big chaos, lots of loss, lots of grief, and so, yeah, that's kind of my story. So for me, travel was really super important. It was a really great way for me to move forward and through what I was going through. So that's what my book is all about, and that's what I hope to share with everybody today.
That's amazing. Can you tell us what was that catalyst for you? What spurred you to decide this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to drop everything and make that trip, that year-long trip. What was that thing for you that just what was the fire, I guess, that made you decide that's what you were going to do?
Well, on my 55th birthday, which was so Gary died in June. My 55th birthday was November 12th of that same year. I found myself in the hospital having an emergency appendectomy. And I knew I had gotten cues for a couple of years prior to that my body was not quite where it needed to be. I had blood tests that showed there was something amiss in that area, right, in my digestive area. And I just, I was busy. I worked for an author, and I was the event director, and we did events worldwide. So I traveled all the time, and I had just gotten back from a trip to Australia, like a week before this happened. So it was really a wake-up call, although it still took me, that was November 12th. It still took me until the end of December to decide that I needed to put myself first, that there was no way that I could continue to do what I was doing and heal myself. And I love traveling. And so I thought, I just want to travel. I got to go to so many amazing places. By the time I finished my job there, I think I'd been to like 30 countries and 38 states. 20 countries and 38 states. And so when I decided to leave, I thought, okay, by the time I turn, initially before COVID hit, the goal was before I turn 60, I want to get to 30 countries and all the U.S. states and territories. So COVID kind of put a little bit of crimp in that plan. But I really, whenever I would travel, I'd have a little bit of time to go check things out, but never really enough time to just really get into it, and enjoy where I was at. So I thought, okay, when I'm done with my job, I just want to go travel, and I want to immerse myself in places, and really not do the normal touristy things, although I did a lot of that, but just other things, getting to know people, getting to see off the beaten track places, and just really be in the moment. And I just had this knowing that going to an environment that wasn't my usual environment, I could practice being the new me, the Paula without Gary. And, I didn't have the normal, usual people around me that knew me the old way. So I could practice, I could speak my voice. And so that was kind of definitely the catalyst was my appendectomy.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I'm hearing in there is that the travel allowed you to slow down enough to
Right.
be yourself and find yourself. And I know, Rachel, you have an incredible story of recovering from grief as well. And I'm wondering what that speaks to you, what you hear in everything that Paula is saying.
We have a little similar story. I mean, you're about the same age. We're about the same age, but I didn't have a career that took me around the world. But I certainly know that it's so hard to lose your best friend and your lover and your probably father to your children. I'm not sure if you have children, but you have to recreate that new identity, and it's so painful. Maybe for me, I did it at home with raising my 4 daughters, and my husband battled cancer for 8 extra years. He was even 6 months, but I know I may be different, but I can relate or kind of picture what it must have been like to get away from the norm and say, I have a new life, a new me. I'm going to rewrite my story, and it's going to be, there's something to live. And when you have somebody has passed away or struggled with the cancer, I can't imagine all the details with the throat cancer, but it takes a lot out of you as a caretaker, but also the life is to be lived. And I think that's what I got out of the struggles with my husband is like, I'm going to live like he lived life fully, and I'm going to open up my eyes and heart to live the way I've never lived before and take more risks. It sounds like that's what you did.
Right, right. And, I really feel like, he battled his cancer for 4 years. So we had the time to talk about it, and even towards the end, he shared with me, I just want you to go out, live life, have fun. We had planned to travel together, and don't stop doing those things. And I think that, it's so hard for us sometimes when we think, we're a couple, and you think, what is this new me? How do I be that way? So I think for me that the travel was such a great part to it. And, my kids, I do have 2 children. They were from my first husband, and, but they were older, they're young adults, so I didn't have to worry about them. I was on my own. So I had the opportunity to do that. And the other interesting thing that happened too was my ex-husband, the father of my children, Brad, he died 2 days after my husband passed away from cancer. It was totally unexpected. So, we had that to deal with as well. So I think that, death is such no matter who passes away, death is so hard. And when it's the person that you love that you thought you were going to retire with, one of the hardest things I think when I did go on my year of travel was it took me a long time to get past seeing older retired couples traveling together. I would get mad, and it's just like, why? This is so unfair. This is so unfair. But over time, as I started enjoying life again, knowing that there is still lots of great things to do, fun things to be, there's lots of joy in the world. Then I started honoring those people and blessing them for having the opportunity to do that. I mean, I got to do a little bit of it with Gary before he got sick and couldn't travel. But it's so great when you can move through that anger and that unfairness, that gut wrenching feeling, and then honor people. I never wanted to not partake in life. And if you want to partake in life after something like that, you have to be willing to see, other people experiencing what you didn't get to. And that's okay. I maybe that'll happen down the road, who knows, but right now I'm just focusing on me and getting to know me. And the other great thing was COVID. I mean, that stopped everybody dead in their tracks, right? You just, that was even like the traveling helped me to start focusing on me, but then being in lockdown was like even more internal focus. So it was kind of interesting how it all played out. I think, I was in such a busy job, basically 24/7 dealing with international accounts, constantly going. And that was my way of not dealing with the grief, is I just kept my mind super busy. So I went from that super busy to then kind of not so busy, but still sort of busy, planning my travel, and then nothing. So I kind of weaned myself, I think, from being super busy to then being able to really internalize and get to know me.
Did you write the book that you wrote during the time of quiet, the COVID time? Is that
yes, yeah, that's when I started writing it. And it was interesting because I did journal, and actually on the cover of the book is this was Gary's journal. I had bought that for him many years ago in London, and he had only written in like the first 32 pages. So I took it with me on the road, and that's where I did my journaling. But I'm not a prolific journaler or writer, so I didn't have a lot of notes, or I didn't even have an idea I was going to write a book when I was traveling. So what I did when I wrote the book was I went back to my iPhone and my pictures, and I would just do a search like March 2019. And I pulled up all those pictures, and then I recorded myself narrating the pictures and what I was doing during that time. So that's how I came up with the story, the ability to tell the story about my travels.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I just want to highlight something that you said earlier. I love that you that brought that back to COVID times too, because I think in lots of situations, some people aren't able to just drop everything and travel and do what they need to do. And I think the important part of the message there is that you're not drowning yourself in work like you were at that time. And for you, it was the travel that allowed you to step back and be with yourself and be with the emotions and feel them. And if any of our listeners out there are not able to do that, are not able to embark on the travel, but if they're able to just step back out of everything that they're doing to keep them busy, to try and not think about it, if they're able to have that self-care and be with themselves, then they'll be on the road, on the same road to recovery.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing too is that when, COVID happened, I was still able to travel in a sense, because, there was many things in Colorado. I hadn't been here forever, right? I had been gone for 32 years living in the Northwest. But there were many parks that I had never seen. There were many that I hadn't been to in 40 years, so my mom and I went to a lot of different places to still experience seeing something new, seeing something different. And that's one of the things that, I say in the book too, is that you don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to get in a car, get on a train. You can walk to the nearest park, walk around it, see what's there, check out the nature that's there, take a short drive an hour away, maybe check out a mountain town that you've never been to. My mom and I took a trip up to somewhere near Central City, and walked around a cool graveyard and just checked out these older mountain towns. So there's lots of places around us that we can go to still travel. And also, you mentioned too, there's also the opportunity to travel internally, and that could be via meditation, that could be via just learning about things. That internal travel is really important as well.
Yeah,
So you don't have to take a big road trip like I did. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. We all learned that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you just said that, because it brought me back to we just lost my dad about 6 months ago. Tomorrow it'll be, and his wish was to have, he was a soccer coach, a well-known soccer coach in this area. And his wish was to have a park bench erected at the soccer park that he spent so many hours of so many days of so many years at, watching soccer and coaching soccer. And it occurred to me when you were talking about that and talking about just meditating and going inside and being one with your thoughts, that he set that up for us. He set that opportunity up for us to be able to go and sit in that park bench and remember him, but be there with our thoughts and meditate or do whatever it is and have that peaceful time to ourselves in that amazing setting.
Right.
So, yeah, I love that.
What I hear too, when I didn't get to travel like you did, but until later, and then I took my daughters to different places. That was fun. But like you said, one of the best things is all about gratitude with this travel that you've done. I wrote in my journal along the journey with my husband when he passed away. I wrote for like a month straight. It became a book that I wrote, but it was, what lessons am I learning and what am I grateful for? And I never really thought of it the way you taken this travel trip, but just being able to process that gratitude and newness of life is still left to be lived, and there's meaning to draw from it. It's not the end, it's just a new beginning, although hard, very hard. But, with your mother and for relationships, and we process grief beautifully if we can get into motion, and whether your body in motion, your mind sometimes not being in motion, but slowing down to process, and then actually making plans somewhere. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned gratitude, because that's one of the things that about 3 or 4 months into my travel, I realized that I still was not quite being fully present every day. And so I came up with this little exercise. At the time I called it the Day Tripper Challenge. And the reason I called it Day Trippers, because I like the Beatles, one of my favorite groups. And to me, that was like a a good way to say a pattern interrupt, right? So I'm going to trip my mind every day, and I'm going to look for 3 things that will help me get out of the sadness or the despair or the anger. And those 3 things that I would look for every day is something to be grateful for, because there's always something to be grateful for, whether that's a sunset or a tree or just waking up in a new day, or seeing my animals. The second thing I look for is something to laugh at, because, laughter raises your energy, right? And then the third thing is to find something divine, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be like a big miracle or anything like that. It's, a sunset, a sunrise, a sign from your loved one. Any of those things can be divine. And I posted that every day in my Facebook group, and that was another way for me to move that energy out and share it with other people, helping me use my voice. And so those just now I call it everyday reverence. We just want to find every day there's something to be grateful for. There's something to laugh at. There's something divine, and doing something different that gets you in a different mindset. And I think that's what helped me even more. And it wasn't something, I would write about it, but it wasn't a big journaling exercise. It's just like one word. I just need, what's the word? And I have a journal that there's a link to it in my book, but I can provide the link to you. And it's just a simple PDF journal that instructs people how to do that. And, it has the whole month's worth of places to write. And all you got to do is write one word every day for those 3 things. And that was probably the most helpful thing. And then, of course, taking the next step and finding the gift. There's always a gift in everything, including tragedy and loss. There's always a gift. And you just got to be open to it, willing to allow it in.
Yeah, absolutely. I was directed to journaling as well after my dad passed, and not just journaling the gratitude, but journaling experiences with him, so that because at the time it felt like memories were going to fade, and we were clinging on to things because we didn't want the memories to fade. And so I was directed to journaling, to write down those things and write down experiences and things that happened, so that later we could go back and read those things in remembrance. And it kind of brought some peace and brought some settling inside to be able to know that those memories would stay. They would be there on paper.
Yeah, that was the most cathartic and eye-opening part of writing the book, was writing Gary's. Not so much when I met him in the early parts, that was easy, but then to get to the part where he was diagnosed, and then treatment, and then really sick, and caregiving, and his death. And then after that, to just, I had to go through his medical records to make sure I got dates right and information right. And I stopped writing for like 2 months because I knew that I needed to write that, and I wasn't ready to write it, but it was so helpful for me moving through it, to get it on paper and to remember again, like you said, because there were some parts of like the harder parts that our mind gets fuzzy. I think it's just trying to protect us from the pain. So it kind of fuzzes it up a little bit or blocks it out. But in order to feel that pain and move through it, you got to address it. You got to look at it. And so that process of writing it down is really helpful, because then, you can go back to it later, and you can't talk yourself out of it if you're just relying on your memory and your mind for it.
Absolutely.
Also, it's, I think too, is when I journal, examine my husband, or who, if somebody's watching, somebody they loved, or even a grief in a different way, you examine it close up and say, who is this person? Who am I? Who are they? And then it's like opening up a flower you never saw before. And you go, wow, pick up a petal and look closer, and you realize what beauty there was, even there are also gifts in the grief, and the way somebody deals with the sadness, and how there is laughter, even when it's hard. And I know when my husband got sick, we spent time watching funny movies, or going outside and pretending that we didn't have that to worry about for a moment. And then I love what you said about just the one word, because sometimes we think we have to write down and sit down and block out 30 minutes, and it's just that one word, but what it does is catalyst the attitude shifts, and to pivot in a different direction, and to be able to, take those good things that we learn to move into a different path, and also maybe into a different relationship. You're more open to that,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think lots of times people are kind of put off. But when you say journaling, when you say that you want them to write, and I think it's Nick that always talks about bullet journaling, and it's the same concept where you're not writing full sentences, you're just writing bullet point forms, and you're jotting down things quick, and it kind of takes that I guess the anxiety of it away. It takes that idea that you have to, write a novel in your journal and open up. Because I mean, sometimes that's hard too when we're journaling and we're facing something like that. Our mind doesn't want to face it, right? And subconsciously we don't really want to face it. That's why we're throwing ourselves into work and whatever else we're throwing into. So the thought of sitting down and actually facing that stuff and really writing out our feelings will make us not journal and not do those things, because subconsciously we really don't want to deal with it. We don't want to face it until we're absolutely ready to do it.
Yeah, that's why it's such a great idea to, and I didn't really realize this until after I started doing it. Like I mentioned, I narrated my pictures, but not having to write it down. So I recorded it onto my whatever the voice recorder is on my iPhone, and then I could take that document and email it to myself, and that was, all I had to do then was edit it, add it, kind of a thing. But the thing that was really nice about that is that I could listen, I could go back to it again, and listen to it or reread it, and even when I was writing other parts of the book that weren't related to the picture, it was so much easier to just, kind of stream of consciousness, record it onto the phone, and just get it down. Because when you get into that mode where, okay, my mind, it's all in my mind, I'm just going to talk. It's hard to write that fast, and capture everything that's coming in your mind, at least for me. So recording it was really helpful. The other thing too, I think is like recording your own voice with affirmations or your dreams or whatever, and then listening to that later, because then you're hearing your own voice say it. Sometimes when we do that in our minds, we might hear somebody else's voice, or we might hear a part of us, the voice that we think our voice sounds like. But when you actually record it yourself and you get used to your voice, it becomes a little bit more powerful. So I think, technology is really great for those of us that aren't big writers.
Absolutely. And I've seen people do that, actually, leave themselves voice notes like that. Or, I mean, I'll often jot down notes like that. And I think I got that from Rachel, is leaving myself a voice message if I needed to jot down notes or remember something.
Yeah, but I think we have a lot of what we're talking about is self-love. We have value. We all have our life, and we're all going to die. And that's something, when I was going through my process, it was like a shock. It's something that I never even thought of. We're going to die? What are you thinking? Like, somehow I never thought that. And then you start being more comfortable with it. And of course, it's been 16 years for me. But it was really, really hard in the very beginning. But if you have facing a cancer, you have, like you mentioned, talking about it. There is some healing in that journey of navigating something with someone. You're doing a lot of journaling or talking about it or processing it or crying through it. So it'd be harder in many ways if it was a tragedy of a moment, sudden accident, that it's a lot. I can't imagine, because I haven't ever had that happen, but I only can imagine there has a lot more abruptness and a lot longer process to heal. And there is. And as we know, there is no right way to heal. There is no wrong way. Just taking the time and trusting it, having compassion for yourself, and, bringing out the best, through writing or voicing or traveling, honoring that person that gave you a new way to look at things, because that is the part of who you are becoming in that journey, that it's all for good.
Yeah, for us, we had it was sudden, but we had a month, and throughout most of that month, we thought my dad was going to make it through. He was making progress. We thought he was going to make it through, and I think it was only about 7 days that we had from the time they told us that he wasn't going to make it, and we actually had to make the decision to remove a feeding tube. And they said once we removed the feeding tube, he wasn't going to make it. And I think it was about 7 days from the day that they told us that to the time that he passed, and we didn't even know how long he would have. They said sometimes people last a day, sometimes they last 2 or 3 weeks, and that was it. And we were just, that's the time we had to adjust to it. So in a way, it wasn't like it was a car accident and he was gone like that in an instant. We had some time, but it was definitely not enough time. And with COVID, we weren't allowed. My mom was allowed in the hospital, but none of us, the rest of us, were allowed in the hospital. And he was not communicating. He was not able to speak. So there was no time. There was no time to have even a conversation with him. No time to say goodbye. It was just that was it. That was no communication. So that's difficult.
Yeah.
That's difficult, that there's no final words, right? There's no closure there. There's no point of finality there.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine having, I've never experienced a sudden loss. So I can't imagine what that would be like. I do know that, I am grateful for the time that I had with him. Like I said, we had time to say our goodbyes and such. The one thing that was really hard when you have someone going through cancer is to see their body deteriorate so much. Yeah. I mean, Gary was only 62 when he passed, but, with all of the treatment he'd been through and, just all the trauma on his body, he looked like he was 82. So you have that vision in your mind. That was a hard thing for me, was getting that vision of the sick him out of my mind so that I could celebrate, the vibrant Gary. And so, every death, has its own unique experience that we learn from. And again, it's like finding a gift in it. I mean, I know that's probably hard for some people to take or understand. But there is, I mean, I got time with him, or I learned to speak my voice because of his throat cancer. I learned to do many things on my own because of it. So I think that's what remembering the memory of who they were and what they brought to this world, and also how you've grown from the experience of knowing them through life and death.
What I found too, my husband would, never, he didn't know he was sick until the day he was sick. But when I saw him go from those 8 years of just doing well, but it was kind of up and down, and then finally to the end, I just started learning what love really was. Even, when you start withering away and you start becoming very, emancipated, and just, the love is so deep because you take off the outer shell, and it was just such a beautiful experience for me that way. And then I have a friend who 6 months after my husband passed away, her husband had a sudden stroke. So he had 6 months where he could process thought, and he could write, or, I don't think he'd write, but he was present. We could write notes. He could nod his head, but that was not communicating. So it was, a whole different experience. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but maybe for somebody that's listening, that the person that you love the most can get angry at you because they're locked in this trap of disease or withering away, or angry at, you mentioned, Paula, looking at people that are older, getting older and enjoying their life can be a threat. Like, how come they get it and I don't? So we go through that process. It is the mourning process until you go, everybody deserves everything. God gives everything to us to learn to grow, to learn to love better, to be better, but it's a process.
Yeah. And I also had the wonderful experience of, he died at home. And so, when the time came and he passed, I I wasn't actually there when he passed. His brother was with me. I had gone downstairs to do something, and when I came back, he had passed. But as I sat with his body, I could feel his energy outside of his body, and it was so much bigger than his body. And so when I'm looking at his body, even in its sick state, it was like, wow, all of that was once contained in this body. And even at his healthiest, that's still a containment of the energy of that person. And so that was a really great experience for me to be with him at home when he passed. And I didn't think I would want that, but that's what he wanted. And I thought that would be, kind of weird and strange, and after he passed, but it really wasn't. It was really a beautiful experience, and I'm just so glad and honored that I had that with him.
I had the same kind of experience when my dad passed. We were at the point where we were taking turns to go in. They had taken the feeding tube, and we were taking turns to go in. And he passed the morning that it was my turn to go. And so I didn't get to see him still alive. So I showed up at the hospital, and I sat with him after he had passed already. But I could feel his presence in the room. And that was powerful enough for me that it was an incredible experience to be able to just do that. And I've done that before with other family members. I've had grandparents pass, and I've sat with them after they've passed. I've sat with their body after they passed. And I've never experienced that kind of feeling of someone's spirit there in the room with me that I did with my dad that morning. So I know what you mean about that experience. And I'm very squeamish. I'm like, my mom was holding his hand, and everybody left the room to allow me to have some time alone. And I was talking to myself, it's okay, you can hold his hand. You're strong, you can do it. And because I'm very squeamish about that. But I could feel his presence there. I didn't have to, I didn't have to do that to be able to feel him and his spirit there in the room, which was really cool. It was nice to be able to experience that.
Yeah.
It makes you realize we're spiritual beings, and we're just here for this brief time. I had my husband died in the way he wanted to pass in his own space, and the day before he was holding on. And I believe that sometimes we have a marker when we're supposed to pass, but we can hold on through, I believe, prayer and things like that. But he just said the day before, he said, I think you can do it now. And he held on after Christmas. And when he passed away, everybody got a chance to be with him as well. And one of his best friends that I had just asked us to speak, they've asked to speak at this funeral. And when he had this time together, he heard my husband say, tell him thank you, tell everybody thank you.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Very sweet, that they do communicate to us. There are angels after too. Yeah,
and that shows the connection that we had when they were alive. That shows the connection that we had with them, right? I that's one experience that I will never forget. That was deeply, deeply touching for me to have that moment with him after he passed.
Yeah.
Just cherish it all.
Yeah.
Some people don't get that, it doesn't always happen. It could be a horrific accident. You never get to ever,
Yeah. And you know what? That just, I took a pause there because there was something else I wanted to say when Paula brought something else up earlier, and it slipped my mind for a minute. So I took a pause there. But something that Paula said triggered me to think and to want to point out that it's not always death of someone that's close to us or someone that we've loved. It's not always their actual passing. It could be the ending of a relationship, the ending of a job, the ending of a romantic relationship, the ending of a friendship, whatever it is. We could be feeling grief at just an ending of one of those things. And I think it's important to recognize that all of these same things apply. The self-care, the gratitude, the journaling, all of these things can help us get through the grief of those losses as well.
Yeah, that's so important, I think, and that's what kind of spurred me to write the book once we were into the pandemic, because it was just like you said, loss of a job, loss of our freedom, loss of being able to travel or see the people that were most important to us. We lost all those sorts of things, and grief is grief regardless. I mean, and it really also depends on your mindset when that loss happens. If you're not in a good space spiritually, emotionally, something really small to somebody else may seem overwhelming to a person that's overly sensitive emotionally, and they have some kind of loss that happens to them, not a death, but and that can be really, really hard for people. And so, I think it's so important that we support each other through all kinds of loss, and we're there for each other. We listen to each other. We witness each other. We allow ourselves to feel those feelings, whatever they are, move them out of the body and bring in good energy to replace it. And we can support each other through that. And, we don't all experience the same kinds of losses, but we've all experienced a loss of some kind. And our connections, our tribe, our families and friends are what helps us get through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that we need to sit with that and confront it and be one with it, and not masking it and hiding it. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I'm guilty of overworking, jumping into work, not taking the time to feel into those emotions and really deal with it and move through it and heal from it, right? No matter what it is. During COVID too. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, we lost freedoms hard in our household. I had a daughter who was sick for the first 3 months, so we were in full isolation for the first 3 months. So, and that was like, I know what it feels like to be in survival mode, right? And just moving through it and knowing that at some point we need to step back and acknowledge what's happening and acknowledge our feelings around it and have that self-care. Yeah, no matter what it is.
I think the communication is so big, because when I just was thinking about all the relationships that have to change with something that happens, whether a loss of a job or a death or an illness or the COVID or whatever. And I know when my husband passed away, then I had 4 children to raise, a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old and 2 in between. Actually, they were actually shifted, so it's 9 and then 18. But sometimes the relationship can change, because what we were when we were going through the battle, we were just holding on for dear life as a robot. I was, and then now I'm trying to figure out why I have time to figure out back to who I was, and then it kind of changed dynamics of the. I know with my my family, Dave's parents, it's like my children, it's all changing. And like with your daughter Melissa, when you got sick, and you get a little mad and frustrated, and and it's all coming down. So we have to be able to use the skills that some we learn in the process and some we've learned through life experiences to say, hey, okay, let's talk about this one thing that we're going to do good today, that we can be happy for, gratitude, or making a funny Mickey Mouse pancake. I don't know what it is, but to find we got to find the start of it is the gratitude, and knowing that sometimes it is not a good day. You just need to cry it out. Sometimes crying is very good to get it process out, or to get mad. It's part of the process to heal.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because sometimes it's not just about going inside ourselves to have that healing. Sometimes it's finding strategies to make it through, and being grateful for those things. Or, I mean, a strategy that we actually used with my daughter when my dad passed was a little photo album, and she was just went everywhere with that photo album. She went to her dad's house with it. We didn't. It's in her bed still to this day, and it was all pictures of her grandpa and different people, and whenever she was feeling that loss and feeling lonely there, and wanting to remember, that photo album brought her back there, and it helped her to get through it. It was a strategy for her to be able to move forward and move on, without him there. So I finding those strategies to help you, um, deal with, not just what you're feeling inside emotionally, but deal with the fact that that person just is no longer there, or they're just as important as all of that self-care, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Yeah, when you go back to being a little angry, I remember with my husband do, and I used to, he do all the bills. And when he passed away, I would remember doing the bills and I was like, I am so angry. I do everything. And it all comes crashing down, and kind of like, and then you just have to muddle through it all, and maybe hire somebody to help you out when you start making money, and maybe later on in the years. But,
Yeah.
it's frustrating to feel like you're all like you, Paula, didn't have the children to take care of. You could go off and travel with your mom. Some have to just, it's so hard with lots of responsibilities that you have to just, you're drowning in a lot of them for a long time. And, I think the purpose of this grief is to make us pull out, and to find the strength to be able to be resilient and find fulfillment, that we can do hard things well.
Absolutely, that we can do hard things, that we can learn things. I mean, the things that even now I'm still helping my mom navigate through, are, I mean, I'm making little notes for her everywhere, and directions for her on the TV, and if this happens, if that happens, and she's gotten herself a little handyman to help around the house, and all that kind of stuff. But yes, we can do hard things, and going back and learning how to do those things, and figuring them out. It's hard, but it's amazing at the same time. It's hard that you have to do those things because your loved one isn't there, but it's I think incredibly empowering at the same time, knowing that you can handle those things, that you can do them, and it's hard, but you can do it, and you can learn new things, and you can move forward in that way.
yeah. I think too, and I'm sure, everybody experiences this when somebody dies, or even like leaving a job. You lose that, you lose a certain percentage of those people that were part of your life, part of your world. When it's the death of somebody, a lot of times that's because people are afraid, to even talk about death. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to even deal with it themselves. So they just kind of back off, kind of fade away. And that can be really hard, that secondary loss that a lot of times you experience. And, I think the important thing with that is to not take it personally. And that's hard. You think, why isn't so-and-so helping me out with this? Or why aren't they here for me? But I kind of look at it like, it's kind of like when you go to college and you graduate, right? And you go off into your new job. There's those people that were your buddies in college, but you don't have anything really in common anymore like you used to. So unless you develop something really profoundly tight, profoundly, I can't think of the word, a really deep friendship, not all of them are going to survive that change, whether it's moving away or leaving a job or someone dying. So I think it's so important that there's groups like this where we can go and meet new people that are doing the things that we want to do, that are have the same aspirations for our life, that are looking for joy, that are looking for happiness, that are vibrating at maybe a higher level, and making those connections helps us to move through it. And I think that's really probably one of the most important things, I think, is connection.
Yeah, I love that you touched on the loss of those secondary connections and those other people in our lives, because oftentimes when you're experiencing grief through the breakup of a relationship or a divorce or something like that, that's what happens. And a lot of the grief in that breakup is losing all of those people in your life. There always seems to be a drop off, right? Like and I experienced that myself through divorce, and it took me a long time to really sit back and be accepting of that and be okay with that and recognize that we were no longer on the same level. Me and those other people were no longer on the same level, and it was okay to let go. It was okay to just walk away from it and let it be how it was. And so I love that you brought that up. I think it's really important to know that it's okay to just step back and let it happen.
Yeah.
In any stage.
I like what you said too, to like step back and let it happen, but also let it happen and get new connections. And part of what I love about the Giant and the Small radio show is that we're helping build communities of support. So service is one of the best ways to deal with grief, and to rally once we know we're going through, we help somebody else that kind of comes back to heal us and to see different perspectives. And we love this whole community that we're building to be able to help others know they're not alone. And we're all, whether unique in our losses, but we're all going to have them every day. We have losses. It's not like we have to wait for a big crisis of something that we're talking about today, but every day we have losses things didn't go the way we wanted them to go. And so I like to say, compress the learning and learn quick during the day, but we're practicing getting ready for that. And I know with animals, you lose pets, and sometimes I had lost a pet, 17-year cat. And I thought, do I want to get another animal? Cause that's a real painful thing. But then I loved your little motto on your heading, Paula: the greater loss is greater love. So we don't want to hold back because we get hurt. It hurts to get things. And afraid, like Melissa, you've been divorced, oh, you want to go through that again, or you don't trust people because you had a bad experience, but you have to go use your gut and, take good risk, but knowing that every single day you're going to have losses and gains, and you choose what you're going to focus on.
Yeah. I love that you say that. I love that you say that we have losses every day. It's true. I mean, we lose the day, right? Sun goes down and go to bed and we get a new one in the morning. But you're right. There's losses every day, and how we navigate those losses, how we incorporate them into our life, how we use them to be better. I mean, I think that's a really great way to think about it. Not in a negative way, but just in a, time passes, right? We all have a life here and at some point we're going to die, and, let's just live it to the fullest. We take those losses and what's the gift in them? How can we do it better? And let's find the joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So I'm going to recap a bit here for all of our listeners. I'm just being mindful of time and seeing the clock here. We're talking about how to transform grief through travel, and not just physical travel, but traveling within ourselves and taking care of ourselves and finding ourselves again after grief, whether it's someone passing, whether it's the end of a relationship or a career, or wherever that grief is coming from. And if you're just joining us now, please do go back and listen to the recording, because Paula and Dr. Smart have offered us some incredible nuggets here today about how to undertake that self-care, strategies that we can use to move through that grief, to find ourselves again, and to become whole again after we've experienced grief. So I want to thank you both very much for being here. It's been a pleasure to have you both here. And I want to give you both the opportunity to leave some final words for all of our listeners. Paula?
I would just like to, invite everybody to join me. I've got, I'm going to be going on a road trip, my Route 66 road trip, on the 14th. And I decided to honor and celebrate who Gary was. He turned 66 on August 19th. And I was going to do that, my road trip on his birthday, but then I got the opportunity to be a sponsor for the Widows, Modern Widows Club. They're doing an event in Houston in September. And so I'm going to drive and leave Colorado, catch Route 66 in Amarillo, Texas, make a little side trip to Houston for this event, and then come back up in Tulsa, take Route 66 to Chicago, and then that's where it ends, the eastern part of it. And then I'm going to drive around Lake Michigan and then come into Minneapolis where he was born. And so it's just a road trip. It's like, it's almost like a living, breathing road trip of my book that I want to take people through. I'm going to post every day about it. We're going to look for one of those three things every day. I'll find all three things, but I'm going to ask, people, give me one, something to be grateful for today. Post it below, something divine, whatever. But I'm really excited about that. It's getting me back on the road in a way that allows more healing for me, and then helping people. Like Dr. Smart said, there's that's how we heal, is helping others, being of service. So I'm excited about that.
Amazing. So where can people follow you doing that? Are you going to be on Facebook doing that? Yeah.
So my Facebook page is Great Loss, Greater Love. So they can just go there, and that's where I'll be posting. I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram it's GP_ Great Loss, Greater Love.
So, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then everyone can go to greatlossgreaterlove.com as well to find out more information, right, Paula?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Rachel, do you have any final comments for all of our listeners?
Well, I love that. I love tonight. And I just want people to remember that joy and pain, they do coexist. And even during the horrific pain or the struggles or I think anticipation, we didn't ever talk about the anticipating something that's going to happen or not, but there is always good that can be found, how we choose to navigate it. And I wrote a book called Modern Day Miracles. And that's my journey of what I give back to others to know how to navigate that, who to partner with, and what I learned are the greatest lessons of life through that navigation as well. And it takes time. It is well worth the process, and that the grief, we need to grieve the life we knew for the life we want, and to not give up on our life we get to live, and to help others to live their best life as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been incredible to be here with both of you, Paula Meyer and Rachel Smart. We've been here talking about how to transform grief through travel, and we ask all of you to come and join us next week, where we'll be talking about how to live a life free from addiction with our special guest co-host, Carrie McEwen, and our second guest co-host, Abigail Olea. So that'll be an incredible topic next week. Please do join us then. In the meantime, have an incredible week, and we will say goodbye to all of you.
Bye.